Thank you very much for coming in tonight. Welcome to Street Level Gallery. For one presents, the work of Papadopoulos, who some of us know as the photographer from the South. It's great to introduce his work to a wider audience. And this is the third of 4 evening talks that we've had. First one we had Polly Black reading for a book. The second one we had Malcolm Ross, David Henderson, Libby MacArthur, Jackie Bradley, Heaps, Evans Fisky, the Boom Boom, and Douglas McIntyre, Ian Pastel. And we've got a vast array of talent with us tonight. And I'll leave it to Mr. Billy Sloan to exclusively reveal who they are.
Hi there, thanks for coming. In no particular order, we'll get Brian Guthrie who will tell you, why music had such a big impact on his life. But later on, we'll get Stephen McKee, who's the author of 48 Thrills, will be giving some bits from that book a bit later on over the course of the evening. We'll get Bobby Bluebell, self-explanatory from the Bluebells. We've also got Robert King from the Pleasantly Surprised cassette label, and we also have Sandy McLean from a variety of guises, but he's currently the proprietor of Avalanche Records. Is that right?
As was stand up.
Lot of music, sorry, I was in there earlier on looking at some records when there was a Bombster or a Siege in Buchanan Street, a Boston Siege in Buchanan Street, so that was good at a good shoot. What we're going to do first of all is we're going to go down the line and just pick a photograph from the exhibition and explain, why we have chosen that photograph and why it has such significance to us, and because, I've started talking, I'll go first. It's very difficult, I think, to pick just one photograph. I mean, I walked around this exhibition when it opened a few weeks ago, and while we were looking at some of the great photographs and all the memories we're bringing back, you were kind of thinking, if I could sneak in here at night and steal 5 photographs, which 5 would they be? And it was very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get it down to a mere 5. But I think if it was, the gun was put to my head, I think one of them would have to be the big colour picture of orange juice, which is on the wall to the left. I'm going to hedge my bets a bit very quickly pick 2. But I think what's great about that picture of orange juice is, obviously it's in colour, because a lot of the pictures from that era were in black and white, but that's one of the rare pictures that we have of orange juice from that particular period of time in colour. When I saw it at first, I thought that Harry had kind of made a mistake when he was taking it. I don't really know very much about photography, but I thought he maybe double exposed it or something, he'd been shaking the camera because it was a wee bit blurry, and it looked as if like the 4 guys in the band were sinking into the background, and it was really almost psychedelic. And then it took me about half a dozen looks at it in the second visit, in fact, that I came here, that I realised that he was probably outside in the street taking it through the window, and that's what all the reflections were, and the kind of the fact that the menus and stuff like that were kind of almost blurred. And the other thing that's really striking about it was that, although it doesn't look like it, which I'll come to later when I tell you about more about orange juice later, for 4 guys to look as if quite literally butter when you melt in the mouth, at that particular period in time, they were probably the most terrifying band I'd ever come across in terms of being incredibly intimidating, because they just disregarded everything else and they didn't care about anything, no matter what it was. They only cared about them and Postcard Records and the own kind of music and scene that they were creating. So that's one of my choices. The other one is the one that's through in the other room, and it's a picture of Billy Mackenzie with a berry, kind of looking over the top of his sunglasses. And why that's significant to me was that I got to know Mackenzie very early on. I went into Radio Clyde once, I think it was about 1978 or 9, I'm not very good with dates. And the associates had driven all the way down in a van from Dundee to do an interview with a disc jockey at Radio Clyde who hadn't bothered his arse turning up. I don't know if we should name him and shame him, but let's call him Brian Ford for the purposes of this discussion. And he hadn't bothered his backside to just come in. He was doing this programme called Street Sounds at the time, which was the kind of punk rock programme, and Radio Clyde kind of realised that there was something happening called punk rock, and we better have a punk rock programme. So Brian Ford got paid 30 quid to present the punk rock programme, which was a bit of a misnomer because he wasn't really that interested in punk. He never really went to any punk gigs, but somebody had to do it and there was 30 quid in the pot, so he said okay and volunteered to do it, and suddenly he was interviewing the Sex Pistols and the Buzzcocks and all that kind of stuff. But he was meant to be interviewing Mackenzie and Rankin, and John Dempsey was the drummer, and the bass player was, John Murphy was drummer, and the bass player was a guy called Michael Dempsey. And they got another way down from Dundee in the van, and he turned up, and a kind of worried producer came into the library and said, oh, it's really embarrassing, we've got this band, we've been here for 3 years, and he's not turned up, and we don't know what's going to happen, you're going to kind of talk to him. And I said, well, I don't know him, I don't even know their name, I've never heard them on the phone. But I went in right away, and the guys knew that I was just trying to sort of walk my way through this embarrassing situation, but immediately Mackenzie was just so charismatic. I mean, he was a real sort of ball of energy and a big bag of mischief all kind of rolled into one, and we sat in the cup of tea, and they said that they would send me a copy of their record, which they dutifully did about 3 or 4 days later. A big brown envelope arrived through the post with a copy of The Affectionate Punch in it, and the first thing that struck me about that before I even took the record out the sleeve was just the actual sleeve itself. Mackenzie and Rankin soaking wet at 3 o'clock in the morning, running vests and shorts and running shoes on, bending down as if they were just about to start some kind of marathon race. And I got to know them pretty well, and I had great times with them, and that photograph just sums Mackenzie up, because he really was a real character, one of the real characters not only of Scottish music but of music in general. And a very quick anecdote, there's so many, but the one that sticks out for me was that I was doing a programme on Radio Clyde once called the Music Week, which was basically just a kind of Radio Clyde's version of round table. You would have guests each and every week, and you would play them the singles of that particular week and ask them to comment on what they thought, of the new releases. And the guests this particular week were Mackenzie and Rankin. I guess it must have been about 78, 79. And they were on for 2 hours. The programme ran from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and it was a bit of a butter-clenching roller coaster ride, because you just didn't know what was going to happen next. And I mean, an example of what would happen, and I can't really do a Dundee accent, so if there's anybody from Dundee here, I apologise. But you would play the brand new single by Haircut 100, that's Haircut 100, Love Plus One. Billy Mackenzie of the Associates, what do you think of that? And he would go, you can when your mother would take you to the fairground when you were a wee laddie, and you were waiting to get on the ghost train, and you heard the record being played in waltzers. Well, that's what that reminds me of. And that was his answer, in all seriousness. And then we played another record, I can't remember what it was, I'd just say it was Camera Chameleon by Culture or something, I don't know. And he said, you can the feeling when you're eating 6 Cadbury's cream eggs, and then you eat that 7th one. Well, that's how I felt when I heard that record. And we went on like that for 2 hours, and I mean, I remember getting called into Radio Clyde the next day. I think it was by Richard Park, who was the boss. They told me that in no circumstances, even if they were simultaneously #1 in the American charts and the British charts, album and single, in no circumstances will they ever be allowed in Radio Clyde ever again. And I kind of took that as a sort of endorsement, because that's just what they were like. And I miss him greatly. He was just such a live wire. There was never any such thing as a dull conversation with Billy Mackenzie, and I just think that picture of him kind of mischievously looking over the top of his sunglasses just perfectly sums him up. And it's a great shame that he's not here in 2012, because if he had been here, I can bet you any money you like he'd have been doing some work of real work, because he was such a talented guy. So that's basically my, no, I was going to say quit, but choice of a couple of photographs. So we'll just go along the line, and we'll start with you, Sandy. What would be your picture and why?
I've kind of narrowed it down to the Richard Jobson picture behind here. It's a great quality photograph. And it was interesting to meet, when I met him, he was 16, he was Ricky Jobson, he was the young yak from Dunfermline who bought records in my shop in Edinburgh. And then when the first single came out, the skids came to an in-store and they signed autographs. And we bought a case of beer, 24 cans of beer, and the band just stayed until every last can was gone. Next 6 o'clock we had to kick them out and meet up with them in the street, in the pub across the street. And then we just saw Richard develop over the next few years as an artist. And he'd go to London, got his deal with Virgin, he'd come back with bags of interesting records, and maybe there's Bauhaus, Bella Lugosi's Dead. And he just went and just became an artist, kind of in front of our artists. I've been to so many of these gigs, so it's been hard to narrow it down. The Associates as well, they came into my shop in Edinburgh, with records, with like 400 records under their arms. So the first single, Boys Keep Swinging, and sold me 25, then asked if they could keep them in the cupboard. And 2 weeks later, the phone rang, and it was David Bowie's publisher trying to find them. So put them in touch, and they went down to London, they got their deal. I didn't see them for a couple of years until I met them in a pub later on, and they had 3 triple whiskies each. Alan Rankin passed out in front of me. I had to pick them up, put them in my car, and I knew they were going to camp at the George Hotel, so he just carried him into the George, rang the bell, laid him in front of the desk, and then ran. That's the last time I've seen him.
Brian, what about you? What would your choice of photograph be?
Well, my choice of photograph is actually going to be a picture through in that section through there of the Dream Boys. The Dream Boys were a band that was fronted by Peter Capaldi, who was better known to you for his acting abilities, thick of it all and all that sort of thing. The drummer in the band was Craig Ferguson. Craig Ferguson, of course, went on later to become Bing Hitler, and then went to America to make his fortune as a presenter of the Late Late Show on television he is to this day. Craig was a close friend of my brother Robin. They both did their apprenticeship as instrument officers at the DP in Grangemouth, where we lived at the time. And at that time, I could honestly say that Craig was the least likely person I ever knew that was going to become a stand-up comedian and world-renowned TV presenter, because he was one of the easiest young lads to line up in the world. I remember that we used to come home for lunch at our house in Grangemouth with my brother, and he would ask questions of my late father along the lines of the big flares in the DP refinery that burn off the excess gas. How do they light them in the morning? And my dad was able to wind them up that this Archers were flaming. And that amazed me that he became the stand-up comedian he did, because he was so easy to wind up in those days. But he approached me a few years later when he was about 17, 18, and at that time I was running the fairly infamous International Hotel gig in Grangemouth, which was run on a Monday, Thursday and Sunday. And that venue became quite infamous and famous in Scotland. I mean, the associates you mentioned made the world debut at that venue. I was close friends with Alan Rankin, and Alan had approached me and said, we've got a band, we got a deal with Fiction, will you give us a show? But the Dream Boys were one of the bands that played the International on several occasions, and I've got to say that they're a bloody good little band. And they built up a great little, well, I think they only did one single, which is somewhere in one of my vinyl boxes. It's a great little record, worth checking out. So that's what I picked them as a photographer, because they're probably a photographer no one else to talk about. But I think they're a significant part to play in that particular post-78, 79 era. They were a band that built up an incredible buzz about them. They became very close to getting a major deal, but by the time that it became near getting a major deal, Peter had decided that acting was the main thing for him, and he moved off in that region. And very quickly, Craig decided to invent his alter ego with Bing Hitler. And interestingly, Sandy, who was working Fast Forward distribution at the time, we crossed paths because the first Bing Hitler live LP was distributed by Sandy, so there's a lot of connections there. So that's the photograph I picked, mainly because it was of a band that probably is forgotten by most people, but they had a significant part to play in those days. And as I said, they were part of the whole international hotel thing I was involved in for 4 or 5 years. And I was lucky enough to be involved with so many bands at an early and formative stage. Echo the Diamond played the first ever Scottish show at International, The Sound, U2. I brought U2 from Ireland to play the International on the Bungle Band Paisley, when the only record I had out was the U2 123 EP on the Irish version of CBS Records. So it was a very, very interesting era at that time. Obviously I'd grown up to the 60s into punk rock, but the post-punk rock period brought so many exciting things to me, and I'm so glad to have been part of it. And yeah, the Dream Boys played a wee part. It's nice to see them being remembered in this exhibition here.
Stephen?
Alright, well, I don't really have anecdotes of the people in the photographs, but I've got a few quick observations of some of the pictures. I'm going to wind and do 5 here. The first one is, you'll notice a couple of small photographs here with slogans in the back that say "Ha ha, funny Polis." And bizarrely, by a funny twist, if you don't know it, that relates to a label called Groucho Marxist, and the guy who ran that punk label in Paisley made a habit of putting posters up around Paisley with that slogan "Ha ha, funny Polis," which he eventually got arrested for, which I thought was pretty good. He also was the guy that printed my book, he made it for Price Like Press, so it's kind of like a small world. Keep bumping into these guys from eras gone by. The second picture I picked was a picture of Harry Papadopoulos. It's it's quite a striking photograph just near the reception area there, but he's got, it looks like a prisoner, but it's actually his phone number on his chest, which looks quite cool. But what I liked really when I read the brochure was the story about how Harry when he started off, he used to go to gigs in Edinburgh, took photographs and then sold them at gigs in Glasgow. And it's like a different era, you know, the idea that you could sell photographs at a gig. I mean, now you would just look at the internet and see them. It just seems like innocent times, and I love the fact he was such an entrepreneur at an early stage. I also picked out a small picture of life. It's all the wee ones I've picked, so go around the exhibition and check out the detail. There's a small picture of Faith Fife. You can see a member of the audience touching her leg while she's singing. I don't know how she feels with that, but it shows the kind of intimacy of the gigs at that time. Similarly, there's a picture of Joe Strummer with an audience member next to him at the microphone, and what I loved about that picture was that Joe looks about as happy as the audience member. They both look really happy, and out of everything in the walls, I think Joe Strummer's probably the only person I did meet, but I promised not to tell the story when I met Joe Strummer because I want to be able to see. And lastly, there's somewhere in here there's a small picture of an anonymous, colour picture of an anonymous punk girl. It looks as if they're at a village fair or something, I don't know what it is. But she's dancing on her own and she's surrounded by guys wearing bell bottoms, all looking kind of like disturbed by the scene. I think it kind of tells a nice little story in that picture of the way punk was coming in and it wasn't really accepted by everybody and it was a bit of a culture shock. So spot that one when you're walking around the exhibition.
I don't know running or something, but kind of actually it resonates with me more than anything else is the one just as you come in, which is the Clash at the Apollo. I think it was 79. But then I was deciding I'll start a fanzine and I've been buying various things at record shops in town, small independent labels and stuff, get back into this myself. Getting some money together, started writing off to bands, getting interviews with them. Whole fanzine guys got together, went to see the Clash, friend and I got to see the Clash. Hung a bit outside the chance of meeting them, maybe having a chat with Joe Strummer. Great, we got to meet them, asked us what we're doing the next night, couldn't come along, no, I couldn't afford it. So because I'm the guest or something, starstruck, so we came along the next night, brought all the records along, got everything signed, and we had a brief chat about what we were doing. I said I had an idea about starting a fanzine, trying to do it, and he just kind of gave me a father little lecture about what you've got to do it, because if you don't, you're going to wake up when you're 40 and think, what if? So a couple of weeks after that, I thought, right, I'm going to do it, got it together. Not too long after that, upstairs left home, moved in with a friend. We started a cassette label, detail all in the brochure. Cut a long story short, we went to Rough Trade in London with 1,000 cassettes overnight on a train, gluing them together, folding them, sticking them in envelopes. Got a taxi from King's Cross to Rough Trade, met Jess Travis, the head of Rough Trade, met him in some of the shop there. Had a look out, stuck it on, listened to it. He said, "Many go with you, carry bags full of things. We've got 1,800 or 80 a month." Taking back all that, and he gave us a couple of contacts. Got the Rough Trade shop, went there, they took another 50, went to distribution export company. They took everything that was left, and we're just kind of, parents were blown away with the fact that we sold everything basically within 24 hours. It literally takes us a week to put it together, manufacture it, print it, glue it together, get the train, sell them. Came back from London that night, and somebody from Radio 1 had been into Rough Trade during the day. They were doing a programme about the explosion of cassette magazines and the My Cassette Pet thing, Mark and Clark and wow. Put together a compilation. They focused on ours for whatever reason. Played a few tracks on it, and next day, it kind of really took off from there. We had loads of phone calls from various people, started getting some letters. Somebody mentioned we should go to Edinburgh, a place called Fast Forward, which I had on about, which at the time was Sandy then there, so next week we went through. Sandy just enthused about it so much that we just found some money, did another 1,000, he managed to sell in a week, and it just took off from there. And after a couple of years of doing it, Sandy got a faith in what we were doing, things were selling well, and he just persuaded us that the cassette thing was starting to die down, and we should do it doing vinyl, so he funded us basically, paid manufacturer distribution deal, whereas he paid the records to be manufactured and sold, we got paid and our people paid, and it just sort of paid to individual. Joe Strummer for getting us a kick up the backside for doing it, and Sandy and Jeff Travis really for giving us that further nod to the DIY thing, and just showing that anyone can do it, and we can do it. From there.
Predictably, I'm picking a Rudolph's picture. For two reasons. I like the jumper in it. It's the one that that was somewhere I've got a nice kind of burial provoking it. And most importantly, because it reminds me of how close we were as a band, friendship-wise, and you forget that being a band was more about friendship than anything else. And that's before we got anywhere. I think it's what I actually put a gig that photograph because we all look so young in it. But that's what I missed the most is that I could be in the band again for that reason, you know, not for any of the other stuff. Back to then, you know, back to the future.
We're going to go down the line again and just talk to everybody about, you know, that particular era. And since we're with you, Robert, you know, you're the one member of the panel that's got really advantage in as much as you were kind of the eye of the hurricane that was Postcard Records, you know, 185 West Princess Street and the two up the right hand side. What was it like? I mean, I visited there a couple of times, you know, with my heart in my mouth because Alan Bourne was just so terrifying, and as I said earlier, they were just so dismissive of it. What was it actually like? I mean, was it a creative environment, or was it just, you know, a place where you knew something was going on and something was happening?
It was like a cartoon film, really, you know. It was very funny. All people were kind of like, what's the word, charming. They were all charming, but most of them were very acidic, you know. If we said one thing wrong, we would get slaughtered, you know. But at the same time, too, they were very encouraging. Everyone did actually give me my first guitar, sat, you know, playing. They gave me my first gig. All the things that happened with the boys, the postcard, you know. I was doing a fanzine at the time, and Alan's first thing was don't do a fanzine and do a band, you know. And then that was kind of like, we were all involved in Russell's here, Ken's over there, and Paddy's here, right? And it was, first time I took Ken up to postcard, I was dead shocked to go, look, how cool these guys are, you know? Not even Alan and Ken. but Alan was taken aback by the whole thing. Alan actually got slagged off more than anybody else. I mean, only you got slagged off by Alan. Alan was kind of like a pussy, really, you know. Everyone was the one that did most of the sarcastic lines, and then Stephen Daly was kind of close behind, you know. But they were always positive, you know.
I mean, I interviewed them in a flat, do you know where, I don't know, a few flats from maybe Glasgow, particularly the West End, there was used to be that Goodies, that curry place that opened to, you know, one night you could go and get a curry at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's kind of flats up above that. I think it's now a hotel or something like that, and I went to interview them for, I think I was interviewing them for the Radio Clyde magazine, Clyde Guide at the time, I can't even remember, it was so long ago. And I had a tape machine which was about the size of a small detergent packet. I mean, it was enormous, it was about that size and about that thick. And I had a wire where I set a microphone on, and the four of them were sitting with Alan Bourne kind of sitting with his arms folded in the corner, proudly like, you know, Brian Epstein. And as Robert said, you know, James Kirk never said a single word. He just kind of sat and gazed out the window. You know, David McClyman just sat and kind of giggled. And the kind of Morecambe and Wise of the team were Stephen Daly, the drummer, and Edwin Collins. You know, Stephen was kind of make the hand grenades, and Edwin would sort of lob them in your direction. And I mean, you know, we were all pretty wet behind the ears. I mean, they were pretty wet behind the ears as a band, and Alan Bourne was obviously a bit wet behind the ears as you know, a record company executive. But the difference between them and me was that they didn't give a monkeys. You know, they were just like, this is what we are doing, and if you don't like it, tough. And we don't like anything that you like. We don't care what it is. And I mean, to try and interview them for 40 minutes and try and get any kind of, you know, sensible quotes or answers out of them was absolutely terrifying. I mean, as I said, they were incredibly intimidating. Not that you thought they were going to batter you, because they weren't kind of physical, they were just kind of really so dismissive of everything. And even if you mentioned somebody that they might have liked, it was kind of like just dismissed out of hand. It didn't really matter what they were like. But, you know, despite all that, even though they kind of treated you, not badly would be too strong a term, but even though they treated you so dismissively, you still walked away thinking, A, what was that all about, but B, despite all that, I still quite like them. And then the vindication of that was when they started putting the records out, and you just thought, you know, this is just like nothing I've ever heard before, not only in British terms, but certainly in Scottish terms. I mean, you know, I remember vividly hearing Falling and Laughing for the first time, and it just was a kind of a real pivotal moment, and remains so every time I hear it. What about you, Brian? I mean, you've been talking about earlier, you know, doing some of the gigs and stuff, you know, with no disrespect, Falkirk seemed to be a wee bit off the rock and roll map, so was that kind of, did that make you even hungrier to get these bands to come through and play the international and that kind of thing?
Well, yes, I mean, my background went obviously back further in, I mean, I grew up in the 60s, I'm an old bugger basically, and I've been listening, I mean, I grew up on, you know, sort of the Who and Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Stones and the Kings, and then in the 70s I got into the American bands that were breaking through that time, like Blue Oyster Cult, who Lindsay Hunt and I absolutely adored and supported and met many times. And when Lindsay started the next big thing, fanzine, it was American bands like them and Cheap Trick and sort of we wrote about. And we got quite a pasting from Tony Parsons and the NME for doing so. But, I mean, there was different sort of epoch moments. Meeting Alec Harvey in 1972 as a young, raw school magazine writer, that was probably the first thing. That's the guy that made me want to work in business. I didn't know what I was going to do, but Alec Harvey was my inspiration. And then the next big epoch was the Ramones, because discovering the Ramones was just like, whoa, what's going on here? I remember by that stage I'd been writing, not just for the school magazine, but for the local papers in Falkirk, and arranged with the Advertising Herald. I was known as the face in the crowd, and I'd started reviewing concerts, and very quickly I'd written a few reviews of shows I'd been at the Apollo, and Jan Tomasic, the original manager at the Apollo, called me into the office one day, and I thought I was going to get telling off for doing something bad, and he says, "Is this stuff yours?" And I goes, "Yeah." He says, "I think you're a good writer." And he handed me a pass. He says, "You can come to this place anytime you want, review any band you want, I'll support you, I think you're a good young writer." I was 16 or 17 at the time. And so then it was a case of, whenever I could get to Glasgow from Granges and Falkirk, you know, by lifts, train, bearings, whatever, I'd come in, and it was just a case of, I'd come and see the bands I wanted to see that I knew, but it was like, they looked down the list, what was that Mountain Dew Dolls? I'd never heard of them, I'll go and see them. And I suddenly got exposed in a 3-4 year period to 150 bands, and it was a tremendous time. And through my writings of school magazines and local papers, I got a gig with Sounds, and I became one of Sounds' main Scottish correspondents. And I got sent as well to review lots and lots of things, and that just opened up so many doors. I class myself as extremely privileged to be the writer who exposed a lot of Scottish bands to their first ever reviews, people like the Rizos. And the Rizos are still friends to this day. I mean, I gave them their first reviews and Sounds, I gave them their first features when I was writing for Zig Zag, bands like the Palms, the Skids, you mentioned Ricky Jobson earlier on. Ricky became a friend there, the Doors used to come to Grange with an old beat-up Morris and dressed in an Admiral's uniform to come to the Grange or Grange round. There was so many great things happening in that era, probably that predated the era of this particular exhibition. But Harry actually photographed many of the gigs that I was reviewing for Sounds. So yeah, there was so many fantastic things happening in that period. It just was, it's like a self-feeding frenzy. It was very different to what it is nowadays. There wasn't the MySpace and the YouTubes and all that stuff. It was very organic and very much homespun. I mean, I started my first label way back in those days, Sharko Records. I named it Sharko because that was the record company in Tony Bennion's cartoons. It used to be the inside back page of NME. And I did bands with that, and it just developed from that. And that's where I met people like Lord, I met Sandy, and I then went on to start managing bands and doing radio and promotions. And just, there was no plan to it, it just all happened because it was all very organic and it was exciting. And I found that this music that came along, that my brother had a go at me in a recent, I think it was an uncut or Mojo special. He goes, "Oh, my brother was just a long-haired Genesis fan," which I thought was a bit unfair. Yes, I did own one Genesis album, but at that time, back in the early 70s, you know, I was into Pink Floyd or Blue Oyster Cult or Kiss or Cheap Trick, and you know, I didn't like a lot of the mainstream stuff that was happening at that time. And I also did what I called sonic back engineering. I remember Lindsay Hunt and I both buying a copy of Nuggets in 1972, the legendary double album Psychedelic Artifacts of the Electro label. And we went home and played that stuff, and we just like, what is all this? This is amazing. And I then went on this, you know, journey to try and discover a lot of the bands. So I did this backward research to find where these bands had come from, and then that led me back to. It really showed me where the roots in punk was, and punk was such an important era. And I'm happy to have played my part in it. I mean, certainly, I mean, in Scotland, a lot of books tend to ignore what was going on in Scotland. There's a lot of great bands in the 76 to 78 period in Scotland. bands that couldn't hear subs during the self-abusers. There was the bands in the post-punk era that this exhibition were bands like the Prats, the Visitors, Joseph Kay, the Huxers. There's so many bands, and in my own little way I've served halfway with all of those bands, because I was lucky, because doing promotions I was able to bring those bands to a little town like Grangemouth and put them on a regular basis, and that helped them build up. I was also lucky that through doing that and through doing the writing, I got the chance to promote a lot of bigger name bands, the bigger labels. I was able to bring bands who wouldn't have come to a small town to the Falkland music area. Bands like U2, Echo the Bunny with the Sound, UK Subs, Squeeze, Bad Manners. Well, this is what I must have promoted 150 bands in a 3-year period in local town halls in Falkland, Grangemouth and Bo'ness, and probably another 150 bands in international. So it was a fantastically exciting time to be involved in music. It was so much happening, and it was so different from nowadays, because it was actually so hype free. The major record companies couldn't hype something into your face the way they do nowadays. A band had to be good. People had to come and see them, like them, and then go and buy the LPs in those days. So it was a very different business, and I miss those stuff. I'm not really nostalgic about it. Not that there's not great stuff around nowadays, but it's a very different business from what it was then.
Sandy, what are your memories of that particular period? You know, the photographs of this exhibition you hold?
Well, I was in retail. I was lucky enough. I came here in '77 for my gap year from Nova Scotia. I only had detention and staying for a year. But I got a job in a record shop really quickly, and it was Bruce's in Edinburgh, and that was like the epicenter of punk. So I just jumped right in, and I got to know all the bands that came in, like the Fire Engines, became friends, and Joseph Kay, and the Skids, and so many others. So we received, I mentioned, like the Associates came in with their records, Alan Horn came in with all the postcard records, we deal with them, Paul Blast came in with his first fast product records. So you get to deal with that side. You got on the guest list for every single gig, and you got to do in-stores with all the bands. You know, my first week, Elvis Costello came in and signed autographs, and my boss would buy 24 guys a lot, and we would stand there drinking beer with Elvis Costello in the attractions. 2 weeks later, it's the Boomtown Rats, Ian Jury, the Blonde Guys, it's like Squeeze, it's like band after band after band. And we beat them that afternoon, getting guys to go big gig on the guest list. And then had a good time. So we did that for a few years. Bruce discovered Simple Minds. Went off on his merry way with that. The chain closed down. I got headhunted by Paul Blast to go work with Fast Products. And at that point, that was the coming together of the cartel of the independent distributors, or the independent shops around the country. The Rough Trade shop, the Red Grinder shop in York, Backs in Norwich, Revolver in Bristol. Somebody had a good idea to form a cartel so that each shop, each geographical area could bring labels to a certain point and distribute them. So we started off basically phoning up all the Scottish shops with exploited singles and various Scottish things, and then Depeche Mode came along, we started making money, Yazoo came along, and then Travis found this band called the Smiths, and it started getting big, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we also had the Scottish side of things going on as well, so we had bands like, I got a demo in the mail, a cassette in the mail from a band called the Pastels, and I played all my demos, and I just really liked that one, and got in touch with the guy, he came through, and we just started distributing Pastels records, and then after a while, Stephen and I set up a label, and we put out some records by the BMX Bandits, the Shop Assistants, and that became pretty successful there. So this period here is kind of before the Edinburgh-Glasgow divide came. This is still the good times when there was still a lot of cooperation between the bands. Like, I work with the Visitors, and we supported Orange Juice, and vice versa at this point. There was still just a really good feeling, a really good cooperation between the cities. And what else? That's pretty much it, really. That was just, at that time, was just a time just to do gigs. I counted out how many gigs I went to in 1979. It was like 160 gigs in 79, 150 in 1980. So just nearly good, just had the ears to the ground to be part of it. And that's it. Stephen?
I was a child during my years, so I wasn't really involved in the music business as such. I could tell the stories of following the guy around the corner from me who used to sit in issues going and walk around after him. So I said, now you get a safety pin for your cheek and all that kind of stuff, you know. But what I suppose that whole year I did do was it kind of inspired me partly to form the record label that we formed when I was an adult called Flowers In The Dustbin. That plus this first band we signed was a band called Kick to Kill. some of whom are in the audiences now. And I think they got some inspiration from making a close probably as well. So a lot of things that these guys did probably inspired what we do now. And also, bizarrely, I did buy one of Sandy's early singles. I was only about 10 at the time, but I only bought it because the cover looked really interesting. I thought it was a great single. It was called Being Boiled by Human League. So.
If you follow on for this, Stephen and Sandy were saying, we're hoping the corporations are going to get us and get more guest lists. I mean, we got in touch with Alan Horn, which happened to do the fanzine. He would just still stand off and just were really friendly. And Collins was really into it. You know, it was like one doing an interview. Alan Horn was pretty much, well, doing the fanzine, we want to be in the mainstream music press, which we're not interested, so fair enough, you can forget that. But I was looking more interested in the other side of the postcard, the Edinburgh side, which was Joseph Gray, who despite there were dark side, people saw them. We're always really friendly, nice guys, and really encouraging. Go and see them, and get on the guest list. You can throw the Edinburgh, and definitely not the same before the Glasgow Punk Tale Owner, where there's just so many good bands you go and see until no money, so they put them on the guest list for the next night. I think people like the Stars and Fire Engines are two most important for me at the time. But the other big thing really was just everyone seemed to be doing something. Everyone was doing a fanzine or on a record label or on gigs. No real competition, because if you said you're doing a fanzine, someone said, well, I'll put you in a guest list if you put an advert in the fanzine. Or else hand out some flyers. So it was just a real nice cooperation type of thing. And it's, again, the photographs, there's that kind of spirit in there. So Johnson being 17, we'd hand about backstage. I'd say, Paul, go and see them again. They'd give us autographs on the back of a Jacob's Club fruit wrapper, because it's all we had to hand. And again, you get on the guest list. And it was just a really friendly atmosphere. It just really took off. So from that whole post-punk things, from starting things in 79, went up to 82, 83, and going through Sandy and Jones, but the Cartel, we found out that just by doing something in our bedroom, writing to bands, getting cassettes, you could do something, take it through this guy in Edinburgh, who could then have it in record shops by the following Monday, to get it on Friday. Reviewing sounds, and he'd put in touch people. Within a couple of weeks, she sold 1,000 copies. You're getting the letters all over the world. People buying mail order, the mail came in, checks came in, postal orders, just to get more gigs, interview more people, do more stuff, and it just kind of kept on going. And it kind of wound down a little bit towards the end of '84, where things started to really change. I couldn't really put the finger on that. Sandy and Ryan could see why things would change, but towards '84, things started to polarise quite a bit. That post-punk period was definitely one of community and shared and old DIY fanzine ethic, definitely still pretty much at the forefront. No competition between Glasgow and Edinburgh, because you could go and see somebody and get on the guest list, so they come back through here, you let them stay in your bed sit for the night, they reciprocate, and it's just a really upbeat time, despite some people trying to put things in your way, like the Alan Horns and more, who just wanted to be a bit Andy Warhol, but apart from that, the fanzine's working with Richard and Fred Alex, like Joseph Gray, and Sandy working with the Scars, really important bands, such a fairly good guys, and it's just a good time in my own fanzine.
We're going to kind of open things up now and see if there's any questions, from anybody in the audience. If you just sort of stick your hand up and say who you're directing the question to, and we'll do our best to answer them if that's okay.
Oh, that's quite good. Alright, this could be again conceptual, but you talk about the 60s being like a perfect cultural storm that produced all that music. Just when everybody's talking to you just now, and into the 70s, but when everybody's talking to you just now, it seems like there was a kind of little perfect cultural storm happened then, which had to do with you guys and the people, right? And so you've come out of like your parental backgrounds or your cultural backgrounds. I just wonder, is that happening just now that we don't know about it, and is the potential there for that to happen? Sorry. You did ask. You know what I mean? Because you talk about, Danny.
I think it's hard to start happening again. I think, I remember thinking at the time when we were involved in Postcard, it was only 7 years since the Beatles, really, Now it's 30 years since Postcards. It's kind of scary, Like, we thought the Beatles were so far Probably, you know. I don't know, back then was having cars on everybody, you know. And then it was, you walk down the street and you'd very drunk and not get knocked down. And like, you buy a car for 20 quid, try that in the evening, man, what the hell, you know. You could go into liquor shops and they'd give you liquors, they got for nothing, you take the liquor shop to sell them. I mean, that's your living, you know. I mean, it's all changed. I mean, I'm not saying I'm getting nostalgic, but circumstances change all the time, you know.
But whether the climate,
There's no colleges back then trying to teach you how to do music.
but whether the climate, then individuals like yourselves motivated through music to do
Yeah, but
something.
wasn't the music motivated us? You've no idea. I mean, a funny thought of postcard. We did play music postcard. I don't remember anything about Scary Bands or anything, or except for Orange Juice or Plastic Camera. We didn't play records. It was all about clothes and about slagging each other off and going to the package, you know. The most important thing of the day is to verify the market and trying to get a pair of boots, you know, before everything got them. You know, and that was, it's like you start, I mean, you go on end, you go on end and try and get the best thing, and in the day you go back to home and go, that's the best pair of boots, you know, that's the best jumper. You can sort of like decide you go to each other, told you. It was like that, you know, and it was, I can't remember ever buying a record, you know, postcard. I was thinking to myself, I better go get that, you know. But nowadays it's all about collecting. Back then it was about doing.
It was a really exciting time. I mean, I remember I lived in Springburn in the north of Glasgow, and I was coming in the bus, and I was going down High Street one day just before the junction with Duke Street, and it was right in the middle of 1978 or something like that, and this girl got on the bus, and she had a dress which was a black PVC bin liner that you put in your bin to take the rubbish out, with a bit of string and a rope tied around the middle of it, and she had
Did you marry her?
I gave her a number, she didn't call it. And her handbag, her shoulder bag was a painted old-fashioned kettle with a bit of rope on it, and she took the lid off it and then got a purse and paid the money, and put the lid back on and put her purse back in. The whole bus, it was almost like the baddie walking into the saloon in a highway. Everybody was sitting in the bus all talking away, and as soon as she walked on, everybody went quiet, and I thought, what's going on here? And you know, we would be doing on a Saturday, probably you did as well, Alan, you know, to Graffiti Records in Queen Street, or we go to listen in either Union Street or the Dash Place as it was then, and they also did one up in Cambridge Street. And I mean, I remember it was a few months ago, I was talking to a bunch of college kids through in Motherwell, and you know, it was all the young team, they were all sitting there with their hair gel and they were all tweeting and Facebooking and iPodding and this, that, and the next thing. And when I was talking to them about, you know, albums, you know, I could be speaking in a foreign language. Now you are in an era where you're 3 clicks of a mouse away from hearing any record you want from, you know, the comfort of your bedroom. But it isn't as exciting. It isn't as exciting as going into the basement to listen and buying that Sex Pistols picture that Harry Papadopoulos took for 30 pence, or you know, waiting outside listening to buy the, you know, the guy turns up the van and he opens the box and there's the first ever copy in Glasgow of Aladdin saying the boy with the thunder flash. Now, kids don't get that these days, and you know, maybe they get their kicks in other ways, maybe, you know, the whole culture and way we listen to records and discover new music has obviously changed. Has it changed for the better? I don't think so, but then every time you say that you sound like some old codger or Clyde Dunn from, you know, Grandad or something like that, but it just isn't as good. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I was in Sandy's shop before I came down here, and you know, it was brilliant just sort of walking around the shop looking at the stuff and looking at actual physical things as opposed to some anonymous MP3.
Even that, we look for older things too. We went to discover new things, and even was that didn't like any new bands, just like those.
But what the point I'm making is that some of the cornerstones of my record collection, I'm sure the guys in the panel would agree, would be that, you know, you bought an album, you bought the first Roxy Music album because the cover was so great that you didn't even bother with the record sounding like the cover was amazing. Or Come On My House by Sparks, the cover was amazing. Or Next by the sensational Alex Harvey Man, the cover was amazing. The fact that the record was amazing as well was the kind of icing in the cake, but it just isn't as good these days. And as soon as you say that, I mean, I had a eureka moment on Tuesday night when I went to visit my granddaughter, who's 14 going on 45, and she said these words, "Grandpa Billy, do you like the Beatles?" And I went, "Yeah, darling, I love the Beatles. Why? I want to get a t-shirt, that one where they're walking across the zebra crossing." I was like, yes, Because up until that point it'd been Ollie Muzz and One Direction and Mark Cardo, and she suddenly told me she'll all come together. I mean, it was like, fucking this is mad. Whether it stays like that, I don't know. Anybody else?
I think you're right there, Billy. Things have changed so much. I mean, back in the day, and it does make it sound a little conscious, but I think it was so much more creative, so much more open. When I first started my first record label, Sharpo Records, it was 1974, so it was pre-punk. And probably I was one of the first people in Scotland to start a homespun label, but it was so easy to do. At that time it cost about £150 to press 1,007 singles. And I got a local printer to print up a sleeve, and we sat at home cutting them out and gluing them together and putting them in a plastic bag. And then literally we went around the country, and on the train, on the bus, all around Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dundee, down to Newcastle, down to Carlisle. This is pre-cartel days. And actually sort of just taking records to record shops and saying, you know, we've got a band, here's a record, and they take some income and they start selling it. And that in turn then got the band invites to play in the town, doing gigs, and they still go. So it was so much easier. Nowadays, I mean, and this is an interesting, I still run a label now, and it's so hard to get your product into shops. I mean, I've got a label and I've got some pretty, what I think, quite good releases coming in the next few months, and it's just so hard to get through the system. Because the system is so geared towards the major labels and the racking space and the HMVs and Fox or whichever the only leader is. Thank goodness we've still got shops like Sandy, but sadly as an independent label owner, we've lost nearly 500 and more shops in the last couple of years that would normally stock the stuff. So the whole business, it was exciting in the 70s. It was everything was just such a gas. And because it was organic, you would go and see bands rehearsing in some basement rehearsal room. I mean, I remember as well, through me managing bands, I got a call from a guy called Kai Davidson, who was in a band called the Catalan, who were on one of Sandy's label, DDT Records, and Kai and I struck up a good friendship, and Kai wanted to do what I was doing. He saw his future as managing bands, and I was managing the Lowlife at the time, who were a post-Culture band. And he said, I've discovered this band, and he says, I want to manage them, will you come down and help me? And I went down to this basement and just up from the liquor rooms in Edinburgh, down there some crypt place. And he took me down to see these two guys with specs who looked like, well, both of them Buddy Holly, they were doing 60s concerts, and that was the Proclaimers. And that's where they started. And I thought, okay, Kai, I'll give you a hand. You know, I'll give you a hand manager, and you know, I helped get them their first gigs and so on. You just don't get that nowadays. What record comes to try?
Can I say I turned down Proclaimers twice?
You don't I said to Kai, I thought they were a novelty act, because this was this band singing 60s cover versions in a off the accent, not a novelty act. So he liked it. But you know, they went on to do great things, but it was such an exciting time, and that's how we discovered bands. And in a way, I miss that, because nowadays everyone's geared up to the internet and so on, and frankly, you know, it doesn't deliver what you want, because ultimately, and I've said this to a couple of people earlier on today in conversations, we're now in a very great risk of losing the point of what the industry is about. You've got to make the product hip again. As Billy said, you know, I remember going out, when I went to high school, there was this thing that we in the seniors high school, every day for some reason you carried an LP under your arm, because you want to show what you're listening to. And I remember at a very young age, I'd befriended a lot of different secular guys, so I suddenly got into stuff that they were into, like Taste, and Tear Gas, and Led Zeppelin, and all sorts of things. You carry up here, and you weren't going to play it, you just was showing it off. And then to that demo, Led Zeppelin, which through the sleeve was fantastic, all that. And then I went, in those days, you could go to a record shop and have these wee booths. But you soon said, can you go to this, mister? And I just went there with these varieties of discovery and annoyed the shop assistants to hell. But pulling out stuff that they're actually saying, can I hear a bit? And gradually you discovered stuff. And it's so difficult nowadays, you can't walk into HMV and say, I've never heard this band, can I hear it? No, they hear it. You know, so that makes it hard for people. But I'm still buoyed with the fact I still meet young kids. I mean, when I do DJ sets at universities and things, and I'm playing all the sort of garage rock and roll and 60s stuff that I grew up on, I do get people coming to me, and I've started to do lists before I go to the DJ sets, saying, tonight you'll probably heard the following bands and LPs, and you can get them a really cool shop like Love Music in Glasgow, I do that sort of thing. And I try to tell them, it's great to me that people do the same sort of thing. I call them back, sorry, back in the go back and discover and stuff. I don't think it's enough of them. And the whole business has become a very instant self-gratification nowadays. I mean, I remember interviewing Rob Zombie a year or so ago when he played at the Foreign Exchange in Edinburgh. And Rob Zombie, he's been in the business for a while, White Zombie, his own sort of stuff. But he came so close to getting kicked off at Geffen Records, it was scary. Simply because he wasn't selling the pre-election number of products. And record companies are looking for this instant gratification, are looking for a band to have instant success, first album. But in my days, I mean, every band that I grew up with, be it the Skids, be it Alataca, be it the Ramones, everybody had a period of growing up. Nobody was expected to produce the album in the first album. They were allowed 3 or 4 or 5 albums to develop into being the superstars that they became. And nowadays, if you don't hit on the first album or the second album, you drop. I mean, a good example is using Las Vegas. 2 albums in, and I will admit the second album was funky, but they'll drop. Simple. Now that might be the making of it. They might have to go and reinvent themselves and come back again. And that's a couple of business, but I mean, in the past it wasn't that way. It's always been like that.
It's not going to be bad. We've got a question for the guy.
Yeah, I read quite a while ago that you were the 16-year-old journalist who saw the Sex Pistols at I Nose in Huddersfield. Is that true?
That's right. I wasn't quite.
Is that a defining gig for you?
I wasn't quite 16. I was 16. I was 77, so I was. I was 21.
Okay, sorry.
I was 21, and a guy, Sandy might remember, there was a guy called Stuart Bell. He was a rep for Island Records and Virgin Records, and the Sex Pistols were doing this kind of unannounced tour where they were going in the country spots, and they were being banned by councils. And just previous to that, Glasgow had banned punk rock because they banned the Pistols who wanted to play at the Apollo, and they said that the council wasn't letting them. And then the Stranglers played at the City Halls, and there was a kind of stage invasion, and the council said that had been a riot, so they banned punk rock. So you couldn't go and see any punk rock gigs whatsoever in Glasgow in early 1978. And there was a guy in Paisley, quite an enterprising guy called Harry Stewart, who was a butcher or something, and obviously quite an enterprising butcher because he suddenly thought, there's money to be made in this butcher meat game, but there's even more money to be made in punk rock. So he started these things on a Monday night called Disco Harry Presents, and it was Disco Harry Presents at a place called the Silver Thread Hotel in Paisley, and he presented these gigs on a Monday night, and we used to go into Bruce's record shop, and I think it was something like £1.50 was your combined bus and gig ticket. You got on the bus at 7 o'clock and you went to Paisley, which in those days seemed like, a 50-mile journey away, when in fact it was like 10 miles down the road. And I mean, I remember going to see Elvis Costello and the attractions there, when My Aim Is True just came out, but they never even had a stage, they just played in a corner, and went on and played. But the Pistols thing was, I went in and told my mother that, Ma'am, I'm not going to be coming down this year for Christmas dinner. Why are you working? No, I'm going to see the Sex Pistols in Huddersfield. And you can imagine what the reaction to that was like. It was like, only one day of the year when the family get together and you're going to see some bloody punk rock movie, that's all you're feeling. So we drove away to Huddersfield. We never passed a single car on the motorway, there was nobody there. We went into one of those little chef service stations and it was totally empty. The guys were sitting in the back playing cards and couldn't believe they actually had any customers. And when we got there, the Sex Pistols had played a gig in the afternoon for the firemen were on strike at the time. And they played a gig for firemen's kids, and they gave all the kids a goodie bag and bits of Christmas cake and gifts and stuff. And then they came on and played at night. And I said, what did they play in the afternoon? Did they put in a couple of cover versions of the set or something? No, they played God Save the Queen, Bodies, Pretty Bacon, EMI, the whole set. And then at night we saw them, and I have to say they were absolutely thrilling from start to finish. And anybody that said they couldn't play didn't know what they were talking about. They were dynamite, absolutely dynamite.
What you're saying is right about the Glasgow band. That's like opened the door for me. Because when a lot of the bands couldn't get shows in Glasgow, myself and a guy called Gordon Sullivan, I think it was from Inverness originally, we got together and brought Stranglers, The Jam, Elvis Costello, Chelsea, The Workers, loads of bands to Falkirk to what's a dance club, the Mannequin. It was like a disco. We put them in the day and that filled the gap. That was like the Stranglers, like No More Heroes tour, that sort of era, that's 78. And we were able to capitalise on Glasgow and front gigs. And then the follow-up to the Stranglers thing was the next time the Stranglers were scheduled to play in Glasgow was at the Apollo. And as I said, I was writing for sounds at the time and knew the Stranglers quite well because I'd been promoting them. And got invited through in the afternoon. The Stranglers had to play a version of their set to the assembled councillors in the Apollo in the afternoon at the sound check to prove that they wanted to bring the whole world to its knees. And then the council gave their go ahead for the show to go on.
And then what they did later was they played the gig later that night, and the single at the time was Nice and Sleazy.
That's right.
And they had these girl strippers, like 3 or 4 girl strippers, and all the councillors were on one of the boxes looking down, you know, you see that there wasn't anything, you know, content-wise it was going to, you know, affect the licensing of the building as an entertainment venue, and they performed Nice and Sleazy, and the girls stripped down to absolutely nothing, and I mean, you know, the audience were delighted, the councillors were horrified, and so on. Next question, anybody else?
Yeah, I'm just to any person in particular, but in general, I think, but maybe a little bit of danger or something when you were saying earlier that things were so much different now, and how difficult it was to get music out in terms of either CDs or records, etc. I think it's a little bit confusing music as it plays live music, because there seems to be much more live music around than there was when I was younger. I mean, there was the music that was live seemed to be centred around the student union or something like that. But for everybody, there wasn't that. I mean, bars in Glasgow, you go. I'm astonished by. I've got a daughter who's actually 22. I'm watched her go through the music scene and all the bands that she was raving about. Bands I've never heard of. I've never been in the top 10. Some of them have. They should be at the but there's that. There's much more live music out there.
At the current time, I suppose don't forget back then stuff goes 10 o'clock.
Well, okay, yeah, it's maybe why, but what I'm saying is live. But I'm engaged with this see, the music is the same.
I'm glad you mentioned that actually.
Can I ask this?
Sorry, can I answer this one? There's more live music now because nobody buying any records. People don't make money from records anymore.
Just
So
so you
people
can say
like
that.
live music.
It's also big.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. Is it?
It's a good thing, it's a bad thing. Basically, what the major labels and the promotions companies, what you get now is a band when they sign a major deal, signing a deal also with a promotions company, a management company, and their entire career is based on not just the physical product of the record, it's based around the t-shirts and the DVDs, the live performances, and at the current time, major acts get more money from their live tours than they ever do in record sales. But there's also the downside to that, because in this country, and this is a UK thing, the UK is the hardest place in the world to try and get promoters to put on bands in the more marginal areas. For instance, last year, I brought the Belways to the UK for their 20th anniversary tour. We only managed to get 4 gigs for them in the entire UK. This is a band that sells out every time they play in the UK, historically. We only managed to get 4 gigs, and financially, the money, the guarantees that were offered were in the hundreds of pounds. It was all that we had to take the gamble that we were going to sell out and break percentages. And it's very different in Europe. I run a garage label, TSB Records, and I've put out about 50 different albums in the last 15 years. And most of my bands are American, Canadian, Swedish, Australian. And I find it very hard to bring the bands I'm involved into the UK, but there's nobody will promote them. Nobody will. Whereas in Europe, it's an order, there's no problem. There's far more shows in Europe even than there is in the UK. UK live market's great, especially at the top end. It's magnificent. The turnover that the major label bands are doing in the UK probably beats what we do in other parts of the world. But sadly, at the lower end, when we're trying to break a new band, or in my case, I mean, I've just done a deal with the Chocolate Watch Band from 1967. I've been trying for the last 3 months to get a tour organised. We've got Joe's Hall lined up, but at the moment I can't get gigs. And I don't get gigs, I can't afford to bring them in the country. So it's a very different situation. But live music is the thing that's the real cash cow in the industry just now. But not for everybody.
There's maybe 2 different aspects of live music. I'll leave it there, but you're talking about the money making. You go down to the 15th note, and you can hear different bands every week, and that's where my daughter used to go now. She says
This city is alive when you use it. I think it's a danger with nostalgia. I mean, this exhibition is about glory, it's here, and it inspired everybody. But I think you have to look outside the mainstream now. The mainstream may be more difficult to access, and the economic model might have changed and all that stuff. But there's bands coming up in Glasgow all the time that I think are more than equal to the bands that we're talking about from the past, and I think it's really important. When I was inspired by punk, but punk was about reinvention. It's not about harping on about things from yesteryear and how it's all bad now. That's just not the case. It might be more difficult to make some cash. Some incredible music coming out. Obviously, I run a Glasgow record label, so I'm going to say that, but I do believe that passionately. I wouldn't be doing otherwise. So if you want to see some good music, come to a gig next weekend at Hadmar.
To reinforce Stephen's point, there is a hell of a lot of good talent out there, and the music promotion business is a serious business now. A lot of people were in their 20s when punk happened, and now in their 50s, and then basically the business has evolved to like a multi-billion-dollar business, so it's much more professional. You have professional road crew, professional PA companies, lighting companies. People were making up as they went along in the 70s, but now it's big business. One of my pet points, to reinforce your point, is the lack of any kind of Scottish TV show a la Jules Holland. There's so many fantastic Scottish bands all the way in the underground that nobody outside the indie scene knows. If there was any kind of TV show like Jules Holland, similar kind of thing that had Scottish bands that are on your label, and some of the bands that come into my shop, like the French Wives, the Frightened Rabbit, Twilight Set, everyone in here, your lives will be different.
The thing is, these pictures are all kind of like silent pictures, and that's what I like about it is most of the effort in these pictures are about what people were wearing and what they were doing. It's the socialising. See, music's becoming an economy, which I don't kind of understand so much, because no one talked about back then. No one talked about, French music teaches music courses. No one talked about anything to do with where we were going to go with it or how much we could plug it. But we thought around for a year, 5 weeks, and we're going to get a proper job. That was the holiday. And that's what I miss about it most, is the fact that now all these things we talk about is about the economy of it, how to make money out of it, whereas the money was a byproduct of it, I think that's the thing that's missing from music scene, in my opinion, is the fact that all these bands know where it's going. Every band that starts out has got an aim at the end.
Well, they don't know where it's going because the record companies.
But we had no aim. We didn't think about a paycheck. We thought about looking good in our clothes, wearing the right pair of jeans down the rock garden and we were going to. It wasn't about it's having the best guitar. You think about, looking at my guitar, favorite guitar. It wasn't about looking at my oil check, it's better than your oil check. We didn't know that royalties. And also, none of the they didn't give any gigs. I can't make any money we made. Listen, wrong. We didn't make any money at those gigs. We made money later on, but that was way after the fun part of it,
Ken, would you take for another couple of questions?
Yes.
In the last couple of questions, if anybody's got anything you'd like to answer?
Yeah, I'll get one to you, Billy. Brian brought in some of his memorability there. When it was a programme from the Lockdown Festival. Those photographs, to my left, are some of Harry's photographs from the first Lockdown Festival, which is some photographs I've seen for the event. I was there myself, I can't remember anything of it. You were the press agent. Press officer of that, I believe. Any stories you can share with us before we move on to your studio?
There was a guy who was, I think he was a hotelier or something like that, called John Caulfield, and Disco Harry the Butcher suddenly thought, there's gold in them there hills, let's make some money from rock and roll. So he came up with this kind of, what seemed at the time a really crazy idea to do Scotland's first open-air rock festival in the Bear Park in Ballach. There used to be a place down there, it was a kind of like a safari park when you went in with the kids in the car and you drove through and there was all these grizzly bears, eating tree bark and snapping the aerial off the front of your car and hanging onto the roof rack and stuff like that, and if you managed to escape with your life, the kids had a great day out. So he decided that he was going to do this festival, and me and my mate got a job as the press officer for the event. Now we get paid the princely sum of 125 quid for something like 10 weeks work. You probably get that each a day now, but in those days we got 125 quid between us, which seemed a lot of money. And it was actually quite a good idea. To give the guy his due, he never had any knowledge of the music industry whatsoever, but he kind of thought this might be a kind of viable event, and it was years and years before, probably 20 years before anything like teeing apart. So what he basically did was, he moved all the grizzly bears out of, there was 2 compounds that were side by side, and he moved all the grizzly bears out of one compound and put them all in the other compound, and the empty compound suddenly became the venue for the event. And very quickly he booked the Average White Band, he booked the Buzzcocks, he booked the Stranglers and a few other people, and then at the last minute he managed to book the Boomtown Rats, who in 1978 were quite a big deal. So we had to organise various promotional events, one of which involved holding a press conference at the Albany Hotel in Bothell Street facing Habitat. It doesn't exist any longer. And because it was the bear park, you know, what do we need? We need a bear. So we get Andy Robbins, the wrestler, and Hercules the bear. And one of my proudest stroke most terrifying moments as a journalist and broadcaster was going up in the service elevator with me and my mate, the other press officer, and Andy Robbins and Hercules the bear. I mean, I kid you not, at the size of a freight elevator. And the reason that he kept Hercules the bear placid was that he had a saucepan full of those frozen prawns you get out of Iceland, and every time Hercules was frothing in the mouth, he would get a couple of prawns and be kind of quieted down for a wee while. So, I mean, you think I made myself, we took Hercules the bear up to the 10th floor of the Albany Hotel, this big function suite, and there was, you know, the assembled press, and Andy Robbins started wrestling upstairs as everybody, you know, was eating cheesy sticks and drinking glasses of wine and something like that. And then, you know, the flip side of that was we took Hercules the bear down to the banks of Loch Lomond, and we did a picture, which I've still got somewhere in the house, of Hugh Cornwell of the Stranglers and a terrified, and I can't emphasise the word terrified strongly, Pete Shelley of the Buzzcocks, standing with Hercules the bear in the middle. Now, I don't know quite how he thought this was going to sell any tickets for the event, but it was a pretty good stunt, and as you can imagine, it made all the papers. So the tickets went on sale, and they never actually sold very quickly, because folk weren't really used to going to a festival, and it was outdoors, and it was going to be raining, and where did you stay, and how did you get there, and all that kind of stuff. So they hadn't quite got that together. So the ticket sales were a bit slow, and Caulfield came up with the idea. He called us in a crisis meeting one day, and he came up with the idea that he was going to go into the Loch Lomond on a boat and jump out the side of the boat and swim to another part of the shore and disappear. And then for the press would run, you know, top pop promoter goes missing, and then a week later he would, you know, turn up, you know, I've lost my memory or something like that. Now how he thought that was going to sell anything, God only knows. And it was a shame, because the actual event was good, because, you know, the Boomtown Rats, the Average White Band were originally supposed to be top of the bill, but then when you get the Boomtown Rats, they get kind of relegated to second top of the bill, so they were a bit pissed off about that. So they were what they were, and it was actually, they were actually pretty good. The Buzzcocks were great, they were kind of peak period Buzzcocks at that time. The Stranglers were pretty in a pretty good period. But the Boomtown Rats were the boys at that time, because they walked out on stage, and the very first song they sung was I Don't Like Mondays, and which was just about to be released as a single, and that was the first song in the set. And I have to say, they went down an absolute storm, but unfortunately it just didn't do the ticket sales. Then they did it the following year, which was 1979. They had a kind of punk rock day with the Jam and Stiff Little Fingers, then a heavy metal day. The next day, all these kind of, you know, metal bands like Saxon and Wild Horses and people like that. And it kind of died a death, because the guy, you know, never made any money, so he couldn't pay all the bills, and then he kind of done a bum and blah 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 blah. And then of course we had to wait till 1994 and we suddenly got teed apart. But it was kind of good while it lasted. But you know, nobody, including myself and my mate who were the publicists for the thing, none of us had a clue what we were doing, and it was probably doomed to fail right from the outset. But it was kind of fun while it lasted. Is there a final question?
I was myself involved with the second Loch Lomond one, and the reason I became involved was a guy called George Duffin, who was a leader based in Edinburgh, says this festival knew about it. He says the bands are looking for some warm-up shows. So I agreed to do warm-up shows for Wild Horses and for Bad Manners. And I was already on the guest list for the show, writing for sound. So I went through for the weekend, and as Billy says, it was Saxon were headlining one day and the Jam were headlining the other day. And basically because of Wild Horses and Bad Manners, we were able to get backstage and hang out, and that's the first time I met Annie Lennox. hung out with Jake Burns, got sort of plastered with him, various things. Met a band that I really liked at the time from the coast, Punishment Luxury, a band I was just found, who were added to the bill at short notice. But what I remember about that day, literally, I mean, it was chaos backstage. I mean, the various promoters may have lost money that day, but by the time the jam came on, the place was run. But I'm guessing an awful lot of people didn't pay. There just seemed to be so many little scams going backstage and people being staked into the gates. And the jam at that day, they were at the peak of their powers. I mean, they'd listened to the Setting Sun's album and they were phenomenal headlining the first night. I remember that as well. The other thing I remember as well was the number of people who were injured that night. I remember that somewhere down the I think it's in one of the photographs, there was like a burning, like a trough, and people were pulled and they were metal and slipped in this thing and there was ankles getting broken. I just seem to remember this endless string of people that were brought through the area, the pit, what you call the pit now, you can cover them, carried in stretchers, there were dozens of people being carried off and you know, paying for the problem experience. But no, it was a great experience. I mean, probably about the third festival in Scotland. I've been the first festival in 1970 up in Inverness, believe it or not, with Taste and John Sebastian. And then there was the one in Grangemouth where I lived at the time, 1972, the Great Western Express, with Steve Cole and Jeff Beck and the Evelyn Brothers and people like that. So it was a very important festival in the local ones, as Billy says. I mean, that probably laid the foundations for Teen Heart and the rest of the system.
And what happened with, you know, with the jam Stiff Little Fingers, because Stiff Little Fingers were punks and jam were mods. So Stiff Little Fingers were on earlier in the afternoon, so the punks went in and kind of, this is our territory, the front of the stage, we're having it, keep away. And then of course when they finished playing, it was then up to the mods to move in, and that's where all the trouble started, and there was a lot of bloodshed. Stephen, who's sitting to my left, is the only member of the panel who can actually do joined up writing. He's written a book called 48 Thrillers about, you know, the experiences of punk in Glasgow. We're going to give away a copy of this, and he set the question, so if it's too hard, blame him, right? So we'll do the question in one run, and we'll. How did we get back to it? Okay, I'll say. How did we get back to one? Whoever gets questions, just know. What's that? Right, first to answer it, so I don't know how the book is called 48 Thrills, and the question is, which song includes the lyric? I can't even remember. That doesn't say Dustbin. That says Dustbin in Arabic.
You should know that in short.
But it's terrible, right? Anybody could write a song. Which song includes the lyric Flowers in the Dustbin?
It's from the punk era.
God Save the Queen.
Absolutely.
God Save the Queen.
We're going to ask Stephen just to give you a little flavour of 48 Thrills.
It's for the bingo, you really need to shout.
But you miss your chance of the snowball, so better luck next time.
Folks, I feel like it's a storytelling session. I've picked a few kind of random sections from the book. I should probably explain. The book's basically about 4 original punks. There's a bit of a combined history going on. Cast your mind back not so far back to 2002 when the Sex Pistols reformed. These 4 guys who were original punks have gone to see the Sex Pistols and reformed. On their way, they're flying down London, meet a young guy who's never seen the Sex Pistols, who's been fascinated by punk, and that's the excuse for them to tell him their stories about punk. So then becomes a big flashback to 76, 77. I've picked a few bits out of that to read to you just now, so don't throw any heavy objects, okay? Okay, so the book kind of starts, every passage has got a little title and all that kind of thing. This passage is called I Read It in the NME, and it's by one of the original punks, a guy called McKee. Sitting in the shipyard toilet cubicle, hiding from the foreman, reading the NME, looking at the NME, pictures of punk. The shipyard toilet was an important place for me. It was where I skived, where I caught up in my sleep. I could sleep for hours with my cap pulled over my eyes. It was where I read, listened to music on the radio with a little set of earphones and socialised. The floorman would never come looking for you in the toilet. It just wasn't done. Skiving was an accepted part of our day. If we get bored in the toilet, me and Sean would go for a walk around the yard for an hour from one end of the yard to the other. I've got my NME in the cubicle and I'm looking at the style. It looks cheap and easy to do, I think. Just like an advert for punk. So cheap, so easy punk. Why not try it? Why not try it? That question bothers me. Reading the NME in my bedroom, new issue Wednesday night, wearing a t-shirt and flares, thinking there's probably people like me dotted around the country thinking the same thing. But what if there isn't? Is there anybody out there? It's a terrifying style. No one in Scotland, or in our scheme at least, had this style. I know nobody is a punk. No club, nowhere plays punk. No shops sell punk. Punk does not exist, except in the glamorous pages of the NME. Because that was 1976, obviously. So as Bobby said, a lot of things from that era were to do with fashion. Fashion seemed to be a thing which got you into trouble. So this passage is called Friday on My Mind, and again it's by the character McKee. Getting pissed gave me the Dutch courage I needed to do this thing. It had been clawing at my subconscious 24 hours a day. When I came in, there was a white shirt lying on my bed. Now I'm holding it. In my other hand is a pair of scissors. I cut it up, stitch it back together, rip the sleeves off, go downstairs for some safety pins, because at the start punk was safety pins, pinned the sleeves back on. I've got some Airfix paint from when I used to paint model airplanes. Start painting slogans in the shirt. Only anarchists are pretty, which I saw in the NME. Sex Pistols, just to emphasise the point. I'm thinking this is a whole new fashion. It's creativity, escaping from the norm, walking the untrodden path. Through the night, my eyes getting heavy but my heart pounding, I'm lifting the shirt. Finally, holding this creation carefully, like it was a Turin shroud so it didn't smudge the paint, I put it on in front of the mirror, and I think, that looks great. Very dramatic for a shirt. There's more about the shirt, but I'm going to move on. Okay. Find out what happened to the shirt. It's kind of been mentioned that punk gigs in Glasgow were scarce for a number of reasons, mainly because Glasgow City Council banned punk, which is incredible to think of now. And the guys in this book spend a lot of time looking for a punk gig. They can't find a punk gig anywhere, they have to go to Paisley and all that kind of thing. In this passage, this guy stumbles across what was possibly an accidental punk gig. And the passage is by a character called Prince, and the passage is called The Rosillos. We were going into shuffles. Me, Hoogie, Dixie Daly, and two guys, Jimmy and Spud from Springburn. When the bouncers told us it was extra to get in because a band was playing, they were called The Rosillos. The band came on stage, looked weird, mental, sci-fi mod, Mary Quant, B-52s before the B-52s existed, like a sexy Doctor Who episode. Faye Five is wearing a PVC helmet miniskirt, wraparound shades. Not what I imagined a punk band would look like. And then they start to play. Monster riff building up in my head, weird dances, guitars and bass going at 100 miles per hour in all directions. Pressure, then Faye Five sings I Can't Stand My Baby in a sexy Scottish sci-fi punk accent. 30 seconds into their first number, there is an absolute riot. The whole place, I'm pushing against the stage, covered in spit. Because the punk thing is that you have to spit, and I'm right up the front getting gobbed on. None of it's reaching the stage. I get gob running down the back of my neck. Those 30 seconds, I have never been so excited in my life. It's the most unbelievable thing. Then the bouncers invade the stage. If you're going to play music like that, then get off the fucking stage now. This fat, sweaty bouncer balls at the band. The band stare at the bouncers like insolent aliens. What the fuck is this? My head screams. This is all new territory. No wonder the bouncers are going crazy. They don't know what they've just seen, heard, experienced either. This is fucking cataclysmic. From that night, this thing, punk, is ingrained in me. The Rosillos woke me up to punk. You're all still here, that's a good sign. So this next passage is from one of the other characters, Sean. The title of the passage is Don't Look Over Your Shoulder, stroke Punk Factory. And here we go. I bought this, Nicky says, like it's a magic trick. It's the damned new rose. It's the first punk single out. It's been out for a while apparently. John Peel mentioned it last night. He was playing another song that's going to be the new single. Yeah, I listened to John Peel last night too. I said, the new single's called Neat, Neat, Neat. Nicky puts new rose on, jumbo drums, wired incendiary guitars like an impending explosion, like the second a grenade detonates. There's a feeling inside of me. What do you think, Nicky asks 1 minute into the record? 100 mile per hour rock and roll, this is an alien sound, like amphetamine rushing, flitting, shooting through my brain. I don't know, I say. The track finishes, what do you reckon? Shite, I said. Because it's totally different. This cannot be right. Very short passages. Okay, so apparently, when punk happened, if you were brave enough like Bobby to wear one of those shirts in the photograph as well, we were liable to get a bit of stick in Glasgow, because the whole graph, it wasn't really the city of culture exactly, and people weren't exactly going to embrace it with open arms. So there's quite a lot of examples in the book of kind of violence directed towards the first people who wore their own homemade punk gear. I just picked one of them. That was a real thing. So anyway, this is one of the sort of table violent bits, because I didn't want to film the audience around. The passage is called "We Don't Understand Number One," it's Victor, and it's from the character Vince. Me and Jerry are going up Surrey Hall Street Saturday afternoon dressed in all the gear. I see Vic, a guy I played football with at Rangers Boys Club last season, coming towards us. Big tall guy, cracking big guy. All right, Vic, I say. Smash. Vic punches me in the face. Wearing that fucking punk gear, he says, you fucking idiot. Vic, I've known you for years, I say. Vic walks away. People are looking at us in the street with expressions that mirror Vic's disgust. Like we caused the trouble, like we are animals. I don't care about them. I'm thinking I should retaliate, but I'm just so surprised by Vic's reaction. You should have fucking scalped that cunt, Jerry. I'll fucking do him. Leave him, I say. He doesn't understand. I just watched Vic disappear. He doesn't turn round. But this is a guy that knows me. I need to watch my back, I think. I should mention actually, to mention this at the start, the book is an introduction by a guy called John McKee from Scotland, or Glasgow's original punk band, The Zips. I'm really embarrassed, John, but he is in the audience just now. He's one of the guys that also inspired me, so I'm grateful for the introduction. Check out The Zips, still a great band. Okay, this passage is called Yes Sir, I Can Boogie. Satellite City #2. I don't know if anybody here remembers a venue called Satellite City. Okay, good. And it's by a character, one of the characters in it. There's loads of Satellite City episodes in this. Our relationship with Frank, the DJ in Satellite City, blossomed beautifully. But our relationship with the bouncers was a little bit more love-hate. Though we got in every week, a dance floor rulebook began to evolve. This rulebook was written and enthusiastically enforced by the bouncers. Satellite City dance floor rule number 1, you are not allowed to dance like punks to normal songs. We were thrown out for pogoing to frenetic disco hit Don't Leave Me This Way by Thelma Despite the severe penalty later in the summer of '77, we also repeated this feat to the insanely catchy guitar track, Yes Sir, I Can Boogie. But you can't pogo, not to a disco track, not in Satellite City. Short and sweet. Okay, this is the longest passage I'm going to read, but it's not too long. It's called The Stramash, and it's from a character, Vince. My dad had been in bands for years when he was younger. He still played the guitar at parties, but wasn't in a band anymore. He was a rocker 20 years ago. Now he was a middle-aged dad with 5 kids. Since I got into punk, there was a wee bit of tension between me and him. I didn't know what prompted it, why it bothered them, but one night this tension came to a head. If you wear that punk gear and that Nicky Kane comes to the house, my father said, I'll kick his arse, and you're not getting back in tonight. I'm sitting in the living room, just getting ready to go out, t-shirt with a wee tear in it, a couple of badges. Then my mother joined in. You've been out the house like that, she said. You look like a tube. That's a uniform, I said, a bit defiant, a bit hot. Even punks don't like their mother calling them a tube. Get in the kitchen and get a pair of scissors, my mother said. She grabbed a bit of my t-shirt, twisted it, got the scissors and cut a bit off. Made this really brilliant hole in it. Go and open that drawer where I keep all my sewing stuff. She took out a big safety pin plus a few wee ones and put them all in the t-shirt. That's better, she said. You look like a tube before that stupid wear it. I realised she was doing this to noise up my dad. You're as daft as fucking him, he said. You should go out with him and stay out all night with all this punk shit and wear your punk Pistols t-shirts and listen to the Stramash. My dad kept getting the names wrong. He called the Sex Pistols the Punk Pistols and called the Clash the Stramash. I was pretty sure he did this on purpose. Oh, I know, my mum said. His gear's ridiculous. And you looked that good with your winkle picker shoes that could knock the eyes out of spiders. And your trousers that looked painted on you and hair about 2 feet high. You were really cool when you were into music, eh? That was different, my father said. We're almost there. Very short, almost I would say. It's called Where Are the Punks? It's short. I come out of Satellite City. The Postal Young team are marching down Circuit Hall Street en masse, chanting, Where are the punks? Where are the punks? I hide behind 2 women at the bus stop until they pass. Not all punks were red. Actually, one of those passes to read. Okay, this passage, is that been a lot for readers one? It's called White Man in Minute Bingo. And it's by Vince. I was working in Greenock in a bingo hall on the roof. It was a good day to be working outside, sun in your face, not working too hard. When I went inside for a break, I saw one of the red bingo jackets. I thought, that'll be a real good punk jacket, so I nicked it. White Man in Hammersmith Alley was coming out this particular day. I was looking forward to getting the train back from Greenock into Central Station to buy the single. I'd never heard it. I'd read the review. The review was pretty poor. Some genius called Roy Carr wrote in the NME, as producers, the Clash see themselves far short of their obvious potential. The Clash should have swatted up in Nick Lowe's handiwork and Elvis Costello's watching the detectives. This guy didn't like the Clash or punk. You could tell he sounded like a patronising old geezer, like a geography teacher. Handiwork? We weren't talking about a wee pottery class. We were talking about the latest viral missive from the most explosive rock and roll missionaries to walk the planet. What the fuck was this guy on about? Nick Lowe, Elvis Costello? No offence, but those two were mouldy pop shite compared to the Clash, in my opinion. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the Clash that a good producer couldn't rectify. Fuck him. I wasn't going to listen to this guy, and this guy even heard the Clash's first album. Thanks very much.
I think what we'll do is everybody just gets their final song. We'll finish off with everybody going to be short. Pick a favourite song and play the then people come to the toilet and do that.
So you're going to play the entire song?
No, I think it's not very much listening to our we'll just play the songs and people can finish on and walk with the gallery. Yeah.
Right. We've asked us each to kind of pick a song that kind of evokes great memories of of this period. So that's the last thing we'll do. So we'll start with you, Sandy. What is your song and why?
I chose the Jesus and Air Chain for a single because I remember getting the white label of that when we were at Guthrie and Cartel, and just dropped the needle on it and just hearing this amazing sound of feedback and rock and roll. It was just like surf meets feedback, just meets, it was punk rock. It was like the next generation of punk rock. And I played it sort of 3 times in a row, and I just got in the car and drove it to my friend's house, my co-worker's house, and just said, "You've got to hear this." And in my lifetime, I listened to that 3 times. And 2 of them, I was walking all the way from Memphis. I heard that the first time, I just thought I was shit. And then Georgia was my first for that. And it felt like this very change, just nothing like anything else I heard. I just thought that was a start. It was part of the bright indie period as well. It was Scottish related to where people came from. So I chose very change.
Brian?
I've selected a track from the Gun Club. There's a nice picture of Jeffrey Lee Pierce performing it. The one and only Scottish guy who did Strathclyde University. To tie in with the album, to this track, Walking with the Beast, currently is the last big story album. It was the band's 3rd album. I think the Gun Club, in that sort of post-79 period as they developed, were a vitally important band. I mean, without them, there would not probably be bands like the Black Keys or the White Stripes, who were doing this real twisted punk-ass blues, just doing something that was totally off the wall. Obviously, I was really lucky to actually meet Jeff on many occasions. My brother actually produced a later album on Mojo, so I got to know him and Kid Combo quite well. I actually ended up doing a record with Kid Combo myself. But that album was a huge one for me in that early 80s period, and that's the track I picked, Walking with the Beast by the Gun Club.
Stephen?
Actually, no, passing stage, sorry.
This is what's done and triggers an uncle.
I was supposed to do this at the end, but I forgot. The record I picked was God Save the Queen, but I'm not going to explain why. I'm going to let McKee, one of the characters in the book, explain why. As quick as I can here. By the time God Save the Queen came out, everyone had heard of punk. Is there any comment you can make in the record? Simply definitive rock and roll rebellion. The most shocking, defying, utterly brilliant smash hit ever. A wake-up call, a State of the Nation address. Britain made you a moron. Thousands of people lining streets to see the useless monarch ride past. Stuff the Jubilee badges. To bring out this record with a defiled picture of the Queen in the cover was unthinkable inside punk. Who are we? Who are the Sex Pistols? The Flowers in the Dustbin? The Poison? The Human Machine? Johnny Rotten, beautiful vitriol. But the Pistols remained an exotic, imaginary live entity. Glasgow City Council banned them. They played in D once in October '76. It's hard to imagine that gig. Missed that, and you had to wait 20 years to see the Sex Pistols in Scotland. So that was my idea.
Robert?
For me, it's one band to look at any photographs on exhibition in our bold Scottish band, which was the Cocktail Twins. And I would talk about the gigs and just getting to meet people in interviews, and John Payne being a really important key point for a lot of people on the panel as well, so music, and you were sort of talking about how you get hear about music, and I think it's reached saturation point for a lot of things, such as we were saying, everything's 3 clicks away. But back then, very many avenues to buy music, so John Payne was a key thing. Summer of 1982, late at night, sitting in my room in the dark, Cocktail Twins came on, never heard anything like it before. It wasn't punk, it wasn't anything at all, just kind of blew me away. Got to leave the record label, wrote to them, they wrote back, sent me a video session, sent me an address, got to see the band a couple of weeks later, put on the guest list, gave us some cake after the gig, and for me that was just the early 80s, because Cocktail Twins were such an important part. A lot of people wrote to me when I was doing the cassette label were buying things specifically for the Cocktails, because it seemed to be doing something ethereal, it's like harp and hitting the drum machine, the feedback of the guitars, this angelic, wonderful female voice overhauling Cocktail Twins just sums it up for me.
Bobby?
The Buzzcocks, hey, everybody's happy nowadays. It's kind of like kind of brainwashing for that one, because Alan wants to play records every day, one record every day, and he's dance set, and it kind of like goes to the end, then come back to start again. That was one day for a record played, so it's runs in my head forever now, you know. 24 hours of it.
Well, mine is Blue Boy by Orange Juice, because I was saying earlier about, you know, everything being 3 clicks of a mouse away from being able to access any piece of music that you like, but it's not as exciting. And back in 1981, you know, when the whole postcard thing started, and it was the handmade sleeves, you know, where the guys sat actually in flat and coloured them in, and no two sleeves were identical. And for the first 3 records, I think, you know, they were really kind of pivotal, you know, Falling and Laughing, followed by Blue Boy, followed by Simply Thrilled, honey. I mean, I don't think there can be many bands that can boast 3 such potent records as their 3 first releases. And I could have chosen any of those 3, but I chose Blue Boy because not only does it have a great intro, you know, that which sounded a bit like the start of Bonanza when we used to watch that on television. It also has one of the great endings of any record that I've ever heard, and the bit in the middle was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I still do it a lot these days, and it sounds as thrilling now in 2012 as it did when I first time heard it in 1981, so that would be my choice. Thanks very much, thanks for coming, and I hope you know you really entertained and informed. Spread the word about Harry Papadopoulos and these great pictures, and you know, we've got a fantastic, you know, body of work here, and you know, hopefully this kind of thing can be seen more in Scotland, because you know, it's dying out, and you know, if stuff like this can keep music and memories alive, you know, more power to it. Thanks a lot.